In these tutorial videos, we're going to cover the selection tools in Adobe Photoshop. They are an essential skill to have because they allow you to select different areas of an image that you would like to modify. So in this first video, we're going to talk about some fundamentals of creating selections, and then we're going to actually go over all the different tools. So over on the left-hand corner on the toolbar, you'll see underneath the Move tool, there are three sets of tools. The first one are the Marquee selection tools, and those will select basic shapes. Then you have the lasso tools, which let you do freeform selections that aren't based on a geometric shape, but they have very different functions, all three of them. And then you have what we call the color selection tools, the quick selection and magic wand tool, and both of those will select based on color. In addition to those sets of tools, there's also a select menu where you can choose to select the entire image. You can deselect once you create one. You can save any of your selections if you create a complicated one, and you can load it again later. And then we have a couple other different tools. So in this series of videos, we're going to go over all of those. But again, in this first one, we're just going to start with something basic like the Elliptical Marquee tool. And we're going to talk about these options up here. So let's say on this image, I wanted to do something to this globe. Maybe I wanted to make it black and white. Maybe I wanted to make it more vibrant. And so in this instance, I will select it by clicking and dragging my selection tool. Now, as you can see, as I drag it, it is creating a circle. And if I move it over by holding the space bar, I can kind of realign it to that globe right on the edge. And those look like they're moving. And that's typically what we call a selection is marching ants. So right now that gets the perfect edge of the globe. So I'm going to release it. And you'll see a more defined marching ant line. So now this part of the image has been selected. If I wanted to change it, I could come up here to adjustments and choose black and white. And you'll see that it's only going to make the globe and this area of the hands black and white. Now, that's not quite what I wanted. So I'm going to actually do Control or Command Z to get back to my regular circular selection. Once you've created your initial selection, you have the option up here to add to a selection or subtract from a selection. So I'm going to choose subtract from a selection, and this part of the hands I want to subtract from that selection. Unfortunately, it's not a geometric shape, so I can't use my circle or my rectangular elliptical tools anymore, or rectangular marquee tool, sorry. So I'm going to come over here to something called the lasso tool. And the lasso tool allows you to draw your selections freehand. Notice that I only picked the lasso, not the polygonal lasso or the magnetic lasso. And I want to change up here to subtract from selection because I want to get rid of all of this area. So I'm going to draw a line as best I can along his hands, and don't have to worry about that area because it's just going to subtract from that selection. So I can keep doing that if there's a part that I missed. And let's say there's a part that I went too far in. Let's say I did that area. Then I can come back over here and choose Add to Selection and then redraw that area. And there we go. So I can keep doing that until I have the perfect selection. Now, in addition to that selection, you can choose Select and Mask. This is going to take you into the area where you can refine your selection. You can choose to increase the radius of that selection. You can make the edges of it softer or harder. You can make them higher contrast. So as you can see, it's fuzzier. Now it's got a higher bit of contrast. And then we can click OK, and it'll be a much more refined and tighter selection. Now, to get out of a selection once you've created one, let's say you don't want it or you want to redraw it from the start, you can come up to the Select menu and choose Deselect. In addition, you can also inverse it. So I'm going to inverse the selection, and what it's going to look like now, even though it still looks like the globe is created, what actually happened is now everything else but the globe has been selected. So I can go up to Adjustments here and choose to make everything else but the globe black and white. So when you're using the selection tools, the basic things you need to remember: one, your three tools are going to select pixels, so you have to be on a pixel layer. You could select an empty layer, but it's not going to really do anything on an empty layer because there's no pixels to select. Two, you can add to or subtract from any of your selections. 3, you can deselect or inverse your selection. And whatever is selected is what will be affected.